Hi, welcome to the second episode of Grizzled Grizzlies. I'm Mike McKinnon.
And I'm Eric Emmerling.
As we tape this, Major League Baseball is in the midst of their playoffs and soon to be World Series. So what we'd like to do is look at the program and look back 25 years when Goffstown's Little League became a powerhouse program and a perennial contender for the championship. This began in the 20th century, or the late 20th century. Now, I find it really hard to believe it was over a quarter of a century ago, because I was in my mid-40s, and I still think of myself in that age group. Except I wake up every morning, mentally I'm there, but physically I stretch my arms, legs, and I hear the snap, crackle, and pop, and it's not Rice Krispies, it's me. And to think these players who are on the 1998 team, probably most of them have just turned 40. We have volunteer baseball coach, many years, Alan Palmer, and former athletic director in Goffstown and football coach, Howard Sobeloff, here for today's discussion. Alan has managed Little League clubs in Babe Ruth to multiple titles. And in 1998, prior to managing the town's first Little League state champion, his regular season went undefeated. Howard was a coach on the 2000 World Series team. He's coached high school football for Alvern, Londonderry, and Goffstown, and he's been a long-time New Hampshire athletic director.
It's been 25 summers since 12 youngsters and 3 volunteer coaches from Goffstown struck it rich, competing in what's been known as the youth kids' largest tournament in the world, the Little League World Series. In Goffstown, the Goffstown boys of summer advanced to the Little League World Series in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, back 25 years ago, which again, Mike says is hard to believe. But the road to the World Series began before 2000, many years ago, when a group of parents and kids began focusing on baseball fundamentals and playing Little League baseball year-round. And playing during the winter and the fall, the team began to roll and find its identity. And in 1997, the first all-star team here to reach the division championship game. The next summer, in 1998, Goffstown claimed its first ever Little League title. The squad swept Somersworth in a best-of-3 series by scores of 4-0 and 7-1. In the first game, Goffstown plated 3 runs in the top of the first inning and then watched Jamie Moran throw a no-hitter. In game 2, a first inning Somersworth grand slam forced the Goffstown team to create a comeback, and they did so with a 6-run inning fueled by a Jeff Perkins home run and a Jamie Moran grand slam. This title is for everyone who has been involved with Goffstown Little League, said Alan Palmer while the team was celebrating following the game and the championship. And we wonder, guys, what did it mean for the Little League program and for the kids to succeed in the summer in the tournament play like this?
Well, I think it certainly was a turning point for GJB. We got there in '94, and there were a lot of good players there. One of the first all-star teams that I saw there was one of the best I've ever seen. They had Keith Potvin, the Coulomb, Sweezy, Corson trifecta. They were always together. There were a lot of good kids on that team. Why they didn't win, I don't know. But we were able to assemble our guys, and I think that helped springboard the league in the subsequent years, because I think it brought up a lot of attention. Goffstown News, Union Leader were fantastic in coverage. It's sad now when you see what the papers have become, because back then, and I got in pretty good with Joe Sullivan, and he started flashing us front page, sports page, big pictures, the whole story, and it wasn't 3 paragraphs. It was a whole story with all kinds of quotes, and I think that brought it to the attention of the community, to the kids. We put lights in. We took we got the villa parking, we put a parking lot in, built a t-ball field and a farm field, and before you know it, the enrollment went through the roof, and we had all kinds of kids coming in. And I think that's probably, in a large part, what continued the success on, was just, it became a thing in Goffstown to be playing Little League Baseball. And I like to think that, we were kind of at the forefront of starting that whole thing.
Sure. Now, as I remember back in the late 90s and into the 2000s, that even if you were an athlete in Goffstown, you had to play baseball. Even if you were a good football player, like your son, your son was probably a big hockey player. And Alex was probably more of a football guy than a baseball player. But this town, you just had to play baseball. I'm not certain why the town fell in love with it, but it's one of the reasons why I love this town.
There's no doubt that, when you talk about 2 sports stars, baseball is always one of them. It definitely took over the community.
Mm-hmm.
Alan, what goes into developing a state championship team other than having talented players and a little bit of luck?
Yeah, it's a talent. I'll give you the Belichick. Well, maybe he didn't say that. It's the players, it's the players. And they were all very skilled, but they were all completely dedicated. And it was never an issue. It was, if we were having practices twice a day, everybody wanted it. And we always made it fun. We always have a break in the practice, go swimming somewhere, have lunch. But there was never a player who didn't want to participate in that. There was never any whining. There was never, I want to take the weekend off. They were always committed, and they were good. And I suppose we had some luck along the way, but they were so good that we didn't need a whole lot of it to get through states.
Howard, having watched the 1998 team win the state title and go to the Bristol, what did that do for your 2000 team? How did that help you guys?
Well, again, I go back to prior to that even,
Yep.
that dedicated group of parents and kids put in a lot of time and effort working with the kids, and the kids loved it. And we did a lot of out-of-season training at Good Rips, a place on the
Yep.
west side, and then at Babe Ruth Field, they had an indoor place, which was kind of not heard of back then. I don't think there was that much year-round training. And the kids loved it. Like I know my son, 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, we would be at Good Rips, and they loved it. They didn't mind getting up and going, that group of kids. So when Alan's team went to the Bristol, to the East Regionals, everybody was motivated to see the success that those kids had. Those kids were like idols to the Little League kids, younger. They really were, And so then it becomes a case where the next group wants to do the same thing.
Sure.
They want to keep that success going, and that kind of perpetuates itself, I think, on it. And again, that group of people at that time, they were baseball people, and their kids loved it. So it was and there was talent, like Alan said. You can't do it without talented kids. And as coaches, we tried not to mess that up, I think. Let the kids be successful and put them in good position. So that group of kids, we went to all those games, and we were real excited when they won, and followed their success, and followed them down to Connecticut. There was a big following, and as I say, they wanted to replicate that. The next group wanted to do the same thing because it was fun and it was exciting, and they enjoyed it. We saw the success that they had.
Yeah, I know, and at least when I was a kid, when you made the All-Star team, Little League All-Star team, that was like being elected president of the country or whatever. You were a big shot in the school, in the town, and everybody wore those hats with pride. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember when I joined Goffstown JR BB in 1960, the year after it was incorporated.
Wow.
The one goal, I know I don't look that old, do I? The one goal as a player, you just, first of all, you wanted to win, and you wanted to play hard and have fun, but you wanted to make the All-Star team. And you had that dream, that dream of getting to the Little League World Series. While we weren't able to do that, I'll say I probably lived vicariously a little bit watching these early teams with their success, especially making it to the World Series. Howard, getting back to the 2000 season, when the World Series journey began, 1 week into the summer vacation, I realized, and you had alluded to it, the process involved 2 practices a day, 6 days a week, and the team also spent more than 2 weeks away from home, separated from their parents and their families. But their competitive spirit and sportsmanship impressed fans from Epson to ESPN. These 11 and 12-year-old ambassadors of Goffstown didn't gloat when they won a game, and they didn't pout when they lost. And when this season finally concluded, there were only 4 teams left in the world that was still had games to play. Volunteer coaches and manager Frank Zumiez, Scott Desjardins, and Howard tutored and mentored the boys. They preached solid values while teaching sound baseball fundamentals. And the nation, and especially this region, had an opportunity to eavesdrop while the coaches dignified and affirmed good play from the boys. Baseball was number 1 in Goffstown at that point. The high school team won the state championship in 2000 and 2001. And some of the players had older brothers that played in Goffstown Little League, though none of them were on the 1998 team, which was the first team to claim state title.
Well, since 2000, Goffstown Junior Baseball has now advanced to 8 state championship tournaments, and they've taken home 6 titles and made 6 other trips to Bristol beyond you guys. What's made baseball so popular in Goffstown, I wonder? Anybody?
I would say it starts with the parents. I think there were baseball people, so in their families, baseball became popular, I think. And then when there was success, then it becomes a thing everybody wants to play. So at the time, I remember when my son started, it was a lot of kids played baseball in this community. And it just grew. And then when they had the older kids' success, kids wanted to be there and have that success, right? Kids would always come down to the ballpark and hang around and watch games all day Saturday. Or on Friday nights, like you say, when they put lights in. That was the place to be for kids.
You were there all day.
All the time. And they loved it. And I loved being there too, I won't kid you. I enjoyed watching the games and seeing all the kids. So I think that's how it kind of grew. And then, in '98, they had that success. Then it became like, wow. I remember I asked Alan one time, he probably doesn't remember this, but after coming back from Bristol, I said, so, okay, you went to Bristol, you played against the team that won I believe they won the World Series, right? Toms River, New Jersey. So how did we stack up? Could we compete with them? And he said, yeah, we could compete with them. And so that made me feel pretty good that what we were doing was, we were doing a good job training the kids. Not that we were ever going to go back there, but that we could compete on a regional basis. So I thought that was pretty exciting.
And even when you get to that regional, you see teams beat other teams that you would have said that's never going to happen, but it happens. It's it's a lot like real sports.
Yeah.
You can have the Vermonts beat the Staten Islands.
That's why they play the games.
Yeah,
That's right.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, in 2000, the Little League State Championship game, Goffstown again won the title by sweeping 2 of the 3 series, and I think Somersworth was again the culprit. This time Goffstown won by scores of 7-1 and 4-1, and the team played flawlessly. In fact, after the Somersworth game, the Somersworth manager told Union Leader reporter Joe Sullivan, who was probably one of the biggest supporters of Little League around at the time, he said that those Goffstown kids, they always know where to go with the ball. and they had better pitching and sharper defense than us. And he said, basically, sometimes you just get beat by a better team. What can you say about that? And I remember we had Corey Mosquera here a couple of weeks ago, and he said the big thing that Goffstown coaches forced, like Alan forced, is that before the ball's hit, you have to tell yourself, what am I going to do if the ball's hit today? What am I going to do if the ball's not hit today? And the game became kind of a mental thing, and they worked well.
And then you run the drill 500 times.
500 times becomes muscle memory.
Repetition is the mother of learning.
Now, at the time, back 25 years ago, I attended the clincher on Sunday afternoon in the 2000 team, and I remember the game being in Portsmouth. I think it was Portsmouth. It's real close to Route 95. You could hear the hum of the highway, except for when the Goffstown people came, and I think Goffstown outnumbered everybody, 10-1 or whatever there, and you could really feel a sense of anticipation, and people were building and waiting for that outcome. It seemed inevitable that those guys were going to win the state championship. What do you two recall of that tournament, that one weekend?
The 2000?
Yeah.
Well, I would tell you, winning our district was harder than winning the states. We faced Wyndham, which was a very strong team. They had two brothers who were star pitchers, Jim Wood and Taylor Wood.
Oh.
And we were the winners bracket finals winners. So we needed to win one of the two games, and it was at Bedford, and they needed to sweep us. In the first game, their star pitcher Jim Wood beat us, so we played a winner-take-all game. We held our ace pitcher back. He didn't pitch in the first game. We held Ben Collins, who was our star pitcher. He pitched in the second game, and we beat them with their second pitcher. So that, I felt, that was a better team than the Summersworth team we beat. No disrespect to them, the District 2 final team, but I just thought they were better. And Jim Wood went on to win a World Series in college. He played at Trinity College in Hartford and won a national championship, Division III, and his brother Taylor played as well, but they were very good. And we had beaten them earlier in the tournament, which helped us again become the winners bracket finalists going into the District 1 finals. So once we got to Portsmouth, we felt pretty confident, but with Frank as our manager, he always kept those kids grounded. He was awesome. He never let them get too full of themselves or too overconfident, just stuck to the program, and the kids played that way.
But there's a reason for that too, which I never quite understood. The Little League arrangement at that time in New Hampshire, District 1, you had 30 teams.
Yeah.
So when the All-Star bracket came out, you had 2 pages long,
the
and you had to
Division
work
2
your way
bracket.
through that whole thing.
Yeah.
Then you go over to District 2, and there's maybe 6 teams, 7 teams.
It seemed like it was just the Concord and the Seacoast teams.
Yeah,
That's basically it.
yeah. And they kind of do I don't know if they were doing it back then, but they ultimately started doing a round robin, I think because they were playing so few games. But so quite often D1 was the seasoned team with the advantage going into the States. With the occasional exception of Portsmouth, they put up some darn good teams.
Yeah, they had a good
Yes,
run
John
there.
Bhattacharya.
Well, then the road show began first in Bristol, Connecticut for the Eastern Regionals. Then ultimately, a berth in the Little League World Series at Williamsport. Their team hit it big in Bristol, going 7-1, but only making 3 errors. The 1998 team was 2-3 in Bristol, and they shut out Vermont 5-0 and beat a very strong Staten Island, New York team 3-2, while dropping games to Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and eventual Little League World Series champion, Toms River, New Jersey, which was led by the future Major League Baseball All-Star Todd Frazier, who was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds in 2007, and he played 11 seasons for different Major League Baseball teams. And he was an All-Star twice, and he won the 2015 Home Run Derby.
What was it? What do you remember facing? Todd, did he do anything against you guys? Mr. Frazier?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, you don't forget him. It was funny because you have the big banquet with all the kids the first night there. Packed in, hot as heck. and they kind of do a bunch of talking and introduction, and they come out with and we've got the nationwide punt, pass, and kick winner, Todd Frazier. And I'm sitting there, I turn around, he's sitting right here, and he stands up, and I'm like, brother, I bet you this kid's going to be something. And he was. Yeah. He was, he wore his hat up like this all the time. He was kind of a flamboyant kind of guy. Not flamboyant, just relaxed, and I think he brought a lot of that to his team. I think he was a strong leader for them. And he was a darn good player. Yeah.
Well, it must have felt like Disneyland to you guys. Yeah. What was the experience like for that first team?
Well, we had another meeting early on with just the coaches, and ended up being quite intimidating because you're sitting in the room with the coaching staffs, and Don Soucy, the king of the Bristol, gets up and he starts talking, and then he's waving hi to all his buddies, because a lot of these programs, I don't know if you had the same, a lot of these other programs, they're veterans. Mm-hmm. They've been there before. The Toms Rivers of Staten Islands, and hey, Johnny, how you doing? Mm-hmm. I've been watching your team. And you're sitting in the back, and New Hampshire never really had much of a track record down in Bristol. So we were sort of under the radar, keeping our heads down, sort of ignored. And you start hearing about the feats that these teams have. We played 7 games to get to Bristol. Some of these teams were upwards of 20 games. Oh. They had something called sectionals that I never even heard of. I'm like, what are you talking about, sectionals? We didn't have that. We had our districts, the states, and we're here. So, you see all that, and you start understanding what the competition level is. And, I was talking to the Staten Island guys, and they weren't dads. These guys were professional Little League coaches. And they were really afraid that if I don't know what their recent track record was, but they were afraid that if they didn't win that tournament, that they wouldn't get the All-Star team again. That's how competitive it was in their program. Howard and I, we just kind of rolled in the coach.
I mean, here, it would change almost every year, and you knew the guys who wanted it, and they'd wait their turn, and they would get it. But just what you said, a lot of those people were repeat coaches who didn't have children in the program. They just were repeat all-star coaches in those districts. Like Lincoln, Rhode Island was one. And that was kind of unique, I thought, just what you said. These guys had pressure to win, it seemed.
And makes your accomplishments even more impressive.
Well, especially Howard's. He beat them all.
Kids did, I didn't have a whole lot to do with it.
And back then, remember, there was one team that left Bristol.
Correct. That was what I was going to bring up. Not like now. Now there's 10 American teams make the World Series. Then it was 4, one out of each region. That was it, which was harder.
The last year.
That was the last year of that format, correct.
And I think you guys, I might be wrong in my memory, but you guys, I think the kids told me that they got to keep the uniforms.
Correct.
Because East wasn't, they weren't going to have the East anymore.
Correct. So at Williamsport, I can't think of the guy's name. I think he still probably runs Little League, but at the banquet, there it was at the last, he made this big announcement that all the teams could keep their uniforms because the following year they were going to have a whole new format with many more teams. So we did get to keep the uniforms, which was a big deal. Yeah. They were excited.
Now they've got New England, Metro, and Mid-Atlantic. Mm-hmm. So there's 3 teams that leave Bristol for Williamsport now.
Yeah, you may have been, I don't know, probably played for the New England Championship back in '98.
It would have been a lot easier. Yeah,
because I remember in 2000 you ended up playing, New York, and which would have been 3 divisions now.
Correct.
I remember that in the 2000 regional team, there was a lot more coverage about it in the newspaper, so I could do some more research on them, except for your '98 guys. But 6 of your starters in Goffstown were batting over 300 in the regionals. Your son, Alex, had a 375 batting average. Tom French had a 363 average, I think. Darren McLean, he hit
Darren,
350, and he had, I think, 4 homers and 8 RBIs. And Ben Collins, I think he knocked off 6 homers and tops doing with pitching. In fact, he struck out 17 batters, allowing just 3 hits in the first game. You guys had a 6-0 win over Auburn, Maine.
Yeah.
And then in game 2, Brattleboro, Vermont was the shutout victim. Josh Gregory fashioned a 1-hitter, struck out 8, and Scott Desjardins knocked in 1 run, knocked in Chase Sennett, and he scored the only other run in the game. Then on the 3rd day of the regionals, Lincoln, Rhode Island, which was, like you said, a team that returned year after year from the regionals. They beat you guys 10-5. And those were the first runs that the Goffstown regional team conceded up to that point. Following a day off, they said a reported crowd of about 1,500 people watched Goffstown beat Old Lyme, Connecticut 3-2. Josh Gregory struck out 11. Ben Collins struck the game-winning 2-run homer in the 6th inning to get you guys into the elimination round. And there the team played errorless ball, the elimination round, avenging that prior defeat to Rhode Island, 5-1. And then you clinched a win, advanced to the final with a 6-2 win over Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And before we get to that regional championship game, which is a whole story all about itself, I wonder if you guys could again talk more about that, the experience, about maybe how the kids got along with other kids, and was there as much fun up in the Bristol, I don't know, the region, the campground area where us adults couldn't go? Did they have a good time there?
I would say our team did. They got along well. They had a lot of fun outside of the practices, because every day it was very scheduled for you. You had practice time, and then you had your game. There was, I think, one off day when we were there where you didn't have a game. But the kids took advantage of the pool, and there was a ping pong tournament. As far as interacting with the other teams, you did a little bit, but not a ton, because you were so, again, scheduled out with your own team. You kind of ate together at your own table in the dining hall. The one time we interacted with another team to go to that banquet that Alan talked about on the first day, we rode with Bronx, New York. The team we ended up playing, we rode with them, so the kids kind of interacted. But not really. Again, not a ton of interaction with the other teams, because again, it was so regimented and so scheduled, your time. And then you had time with your families, right? Because think about it, these parents hadn't seen their kids for a week. In Bristol, it was a pretty long haul when we were there. I'm sure the same, because we went right to the end, so we went from like Thursday to the following Thursday. So the parents wanted to see their kids when there was free time. You had to meet with them at this pavilion. They were very strict about where you could interact with your children for security reasons. So with all that stuff, and then you had, bed checks and that kind of stuff. So kids had fun.
Checks?
We did.
Yeah,
We had to sleep in the bunkhouse, or in this little room outside the bunkhouse, to make sure they didn't do anything.
We had no air conditioning.
None. Yeah, it was
No
hot
AC.
as heck.
And it was always entertaining, because the kids would walk in like a row of ducks from the field heading for the dorm, and all the parents would be convening on them and wanting to get their piece before, because they only had a brief moment. It was kind of strange. But yeah, we were, as Howard said, it was pretty regimented. We went to that theme park.
Oh yeah,
That was
Lake Compounds.
Yep, that was a
Yeah, I forgot
great
about
time
that.
there.
And then toured ESPN, because it's right in Bristol. So you had a couple of social events that you did, which was fun. The kids enjoyed that. Lake Compounds they liked. I don't think they loved the tour of ESPN. It wasn't as exciting as I think they thought it was going to be. But Stuart Scott, who did the TV, he came to Bristol every day to talk with the kids, which was really pretty cool. They enjoyed that, because at the time he was their hot anchor.
Yep.
So they liked that.
But they treated you really well.
Really
It was well done, and entertaining and enjoyable. It really was.
And the other thing, they assigned you these volunteer people from Bristol.
Oh,
They were called like team parents. It was an artist. It was a retired husband and wife, and they did all your they kept you on your schedule. They would say, when do you want to practice? You know, when do you want to go to the pool or whatever? And they would come with your daily schedule. Little League was very, as Alan said, very organized, and things were real tight with the schedule.
But it wasn't a pain, and it
Nope.
wasn't, you know, it wasn't inconvenient.
Nope.
It was all done really well.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids loved it. I think I enjoyed it. You know, Frank was awesome, getting stats the best he could, because in those days there was no internet to track how. There was internet, but it was very in its infant. There was no like stats, or so he would read. He had his newspapers. Like he would go to the library to find out which teams and who were the good players. So he tried to strategize against pitchers we were going to see if he had some information about them. Like the Pittsfield kid, you know, he was supposedly the best pitcher in Bristol. So we were a little concerned about that, but I mean, it worked out. So it was fun.
Well, the championship game was really exciting.
Real
I'll tell you, it was
exciting.
probably a topic for another show.
Of itself, yeah.
Just in itself. It was an extra inning affair, if I remember correctly. And it was over Rolando Paulino, Little League of Bronx, New York. Now, it was played probably with more than 2,000 fans, if I remember correctly, and at night, which, though Goffstown had lights, it was still a new experience. It was televised live on ESPN. That just had to be really exciting. And the Rolando Paulino League was just 4 years in existence. Its program involved nearly twice as many of the participants as Goffstown Little League. And it was charted, Goffstown was charted with Little League in 1959, as we said before. And the team from the Bronx seemed like as formidable as playing the Yankees. And 5 of their players had returned from the team that reached the quarterfinals the year before. And following the loss to Goffstown, the Bronx team went on to reach the World Series in 2001. Jarek Ostrowski, am I pronouncing that right?
Yes, you are.
He blooped a single to right field to score the game's only run in the top of the 7th inning, and both pitches threw 2 hitters. What a game. Juan Almonte took a no-hitter into the 6th inning against you guys, striking out 12, while Ben Collins scored from first base for that run, and he struck out 11 players. It was as if Red Sox were playing the evil empire, the lionized Yankees. Now, we have to remember, this was before 2004, and the Red Sox won their first World Series and finally conquered the curse of the Bambino. But it was even more remarkable because in 2004, or shortly thereafter, Danny Almonte, Juan's younger brother, who threw a no-hitter, perfect game at that World Series. They found out he was actually 14 years old. And one of the comments Frank made to the papers at the time was, growing up loving baseball and watching the Little League World Series on ABC's Wild World of Sports, this is so unbelievable. We're going to the World Series. I can't imagine the excitement. It's just unbelievable at the time. How was the team entering that game?
As I say, they were a group of kids that were confident but not cocky, and Frank did a great job as the manager with that team, keeping them grounded and staying focused on one at-bat at a time. Like Alan said, knowing where the ball's going when it's hit to you, all the fundamentals, you know, just to relax and play baseball. He got them to do that, which isn't easy to do, but that group of kids had success, and as I say, they were confident in their abilities, but not cocky, and they didn't panic if things didn't go their way. Scott Desjardins was our third base coach. Frank wanted him to be the third base coach. He was great as a third base coach. The run you talked about, Scott took a risk by sending Ben Collins on that base hit, thinking there's not going to be many runs. This might be our only opportunity to get a run. So he took a risk and sent them, and the run scored, and it held up, which was a great strategic move rather than holding him. Ben Collins was just a cool kid. He cool in a good way. He just pitched. He just pitched, and again, part of it's also things just lined up and worked well for the team. They played well down there, and in that game they played well, and he threw strikes, and they couldn't hit him. He had his mystery pitch, which was a drop pitch his dad had taught him. It was kind of a no-seam, but they called it the mystery pitch. That's why I call it that. It was this big secret. It really wasn't. But he had great command of it, and he threw strikes. Baseball fundamentals: throw strikes and make them hit the baseball, and they couldn't. He was unhittable that night. Just worked out well.
I think one of the things that hurt our team is when we went down there, I was expecting gas from everybody. I just thought they'd blow you away with their speed, and they didn't. The off-speed pitches were so effective. And it's something that we never really focused on, and that's one of the things that I told Frankie afterwards, is that get off-speed pitches going, because it becomes tremendously effective down there. And you don't really do that a whole lot in Little League. You just try to blow everybody away with your gas, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember in Little League, if some pitcher threw a change of pace to me, then I'd probably hit it.
Right.
Fastball be in the mitt before I swung.
I mean, Ben threw hard, which was real important, which made that second pitch more effective. Frank called the games. He called the pitches. He called a great game, as evidenced by they couldn't hit him.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how Little League at the highest level is. It's different now because they have pitch counts, which is, I think, a good thing. It gives more kids opportunities, and it makes coaching a whole lot more strategic. But back then, your kid could go, 9 innings, I think, and they could pitch every other day. So if you had a couple of aces, and our guys were really, Josh and Ben, and then Tommy French also pitched. Those 3 kids were lights out. Like, they threw well, they threw hard enough. Ben threw hard, and they had good off-speed pitches. That's all we needed. And they couldn't hit them.
Yeah, you probably can't succeed that way now.
Nope.
You need more depth in your pitching.
You get to 85 pitches, and that's it. You got to go.
If they have 50 or something, you got to wait 2 days. Yeah, there's a lot of
much.
If you jump ahead early, they'll pull the starter out.
But it is easier because you do a continuous batting order.
Yeah.
So the top of your order only comes up 3 times a game. So if you get through them, you're doing well.
Yeah. So your substitutions are easier. That's the other strategy. If we would get up, by a fair margin, then it becomes a case of, all right, how are we going to make sure we get all these, 12 players in and get their adequate batting and fielding and, all those things came into play a little bit more than now. When you have continuous batting order, you can come in and out of the lineup in the field because you're in the batting order. The substitution piece is not as critical, I think.
I didn't have any of that.
No.
In '98, there were no minimums.
Oh, well, we did.
It's changed so much. Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad thing. If you make an all-star team, you're one of 12, the best in your league, or the best 12 for that team. I think at that age, 12 years old, I think you should be able to play everybody in every game. I really do. And I think, if I'm remembering, you either needed one defensive in the field or one at bat. I don't think you needed both then. I'm not sure.
I thought it was you had to do both.
I could be wrong, but I just
3 outs or an
remember
at-bat.
it became strategic.
3
But
outs and an at bat.
I think if you're going to make the team, you got to figure that out and get guys into the game. You can do that if you're managing, I think, well. That did not hurt us. When we got to Williamsport, that didn't hurt us at all. What hurt us was, so the first game, we drew the first game, it was on ESPN. I'm sure you probably have that. And Ben had been unhittable for 14 games or whatever our run was. And then we get to Bel Air, Texas, they were hitting him. They weren't hitting him hard, but they were hitting him, not strikeout after strikeout. So that became a little like, these teams probably have seen fast pitching, before. They're a little more, because they had won their regions, so that was the kind of our aha moment. Even though it was a close game, it was like, all right, this is going to be harder. Not that we thought it was going to be easy, but we had a pretty good run through, until that New York game. But even there, they didn't hit our guy. It was just, we didn't hit their guy either. We just created a run. This Bel Air, Texas team could hit. So then it became,
And they don't even need to necessarily hit them well.
No.
They just have to
Put the ball in play.
Put
Exactly.
pressure on your defense.
Exactly.
And your team becomes different
It's easy when
when they're striking out. Yeah.
out of 18 outs, you get 12 or 13 strikeouts. There's not a whole lot.
Yeah,
For
when
you
that goes
guys to
down to
do.
6, it's a whole new world. Yeah.
So, anyway,
Now, I think Venezuela won the tournament
They did.
in 2000, and they
beat
beat Bel Air,
Texas.
Texas, the
Yeah.
team that you lost your first game to.
Yep.
Japan, Venezuela, Saudi Arabia, and Canada, I think, were the four
Correct.
international teams. And Canada had and then of course there was Texas, Iowa, Washington, and you guys were there. But I remember the Canadian team had a roster on the guy. His name was I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Zolarich Snick or something. And he was from Toronto, and he ended up playing in the NHL for about 7 years as a center. It was a pretty good team. You guys were the third team from New Hampshire to get to the World Series. I think Dover did it. I forget the year. And then Bedford in '93.
So when Bedford made it, we were aware of that. That
Yep.
was a big deal, and they went far in that tournament.
They went to
They
the
lost the U.S.
championship.
final.
Yep, they lost to a team from
California,
Los Angeles
Long Beach, I thought.
that won back to back, and they had this kid named Sean Burroughs.
Burroughs, who ended up playing in the major
With the
leagues.
Texas
His dad
Jazz.
was a major leaguer.
Yeah.
Jeff
I remember he was introduced in the show. I watched it on TV.
30 for
and he
30.
said,
That's one that I remember. When Bedford went, there was a lot of excitement. I was
Craig
like, wow.
Joseph's team.
Yeah.
yeah.
I was like, wow.
Good rips.
Yeah. These
Now,
guys
yeah,
are competing.
At Bel Air, that was the first time they had gone there, and they had a stud pitcher who I can't remember how many he struck out. His name was Ross Haggard, and he had set a record. I think he had thrown a no-hitter before, and then shut you guys out and shut somebody else out. He was the only player up to that time to reach. To throw 12 and 2/3 shutout innings or something like that. The only people that got hits were Alex and Eric off this guy in the 6th inning. So
Yeah, we had runners on, and then I can't remember who it was, but I think we hit a hard line drive. I'm thinking, okay, good, we can get some runs here, and first baseman hit right to him, and that was kind of it.
Yeah, Haggard was quoted in a newspaper saying that he was pretty nervous in the first inning because there was a lot of people in the stands, and he didn't know how he'd handle that. But apparently he got past it somehow. Yeah.
Again, I don't think our kids were intimidated by the bright lights, and they were excited. Just that kid we just couldn't hit him. Our kids were up there swinging. They were having good at bats. We just couldn't hit this kid.
Since then, Bel Air has won more state championships than any other Little League program in Texas, and they've had 4 players go to the major leagues, including Chuck Knobloch with the Yankees.
Yeah.
So, and then you ran into another ace. I guess everybody has an ace on All-Stars in the second game. Dan O'Donnell held you guys to 2 hits. Well, he struck out 7, and it was a 5-0 game. Davenport, Iowa, I think.
Again, I think, and it's the luck of the draw there. It's all a flip of a coin. But so that was their first game, and this was our second game. So again, not that our second pitcher was, a whole lot different than Ben, but that was their race. So we didn't match up as particularly well with them. And they hit the heck out of the ball, I remember. They had a real tall kid who ended up playing football at the University of Iowa.
Julian Vanderlei.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was 6'2" and 231 pounds. And I had a picture of him that we've probably pounced up here. I found a picture up in the paper next to one of the other guys on the team.
Eric
He was
Zumiez.
head and shoulders ahead of everybody else, yeah. He had hit 13 home runs in that All-Star tourney leading up to that point. And like you said, he went on to he became a center Played for a couple of NFL teams. As far as I know, those are the only 2 players in the 2000 program that went on to big things. And then in '98, Todd Frazier was the only one I could find that went on to play Major League Baseball.
In the dining hall, they have pictures of all the major leaguers who came out of the Little League World Series, which was pretty cool. Jason Varitek being one of them.
So that game was the, I think errors hurt you in that game too. I think you had 3 errors and 2 of the 5 runs were unearned.
Yeah,
But
I
that
remember.
happens.
Boy,
But
this is
remember they
awful
hit-
nice of you to
month, yeah.
revisit all of this, Eric.
They hit a
a
ton.
month without committing any errors. I mean, it's pretty crazy that you finally get up a couple. Yeah. So.
Well, our boys this summer, the final opportunity, had a 4-run lead going into the game against a team from
Washington.
Vancouver, Washington, right. They came back to win when a player by the name of Jay Ponciano hit a 3-run homer in the bottom of the 5th inning. Now, he went on to play baseball at the University of Washington, if I know correctly, and he also became a author of children's books. And one of his books was called Little League Dreams. And today he is coaching his grandchildren in Little League Baseball. I think there was another player on the team, Jack Prevey, who, if I remember correctly, he went on to play at Oregon State before playing about 5 seasons of minor league ball. So you guys faced some really tough competition, and
We did.
really exciting. I think you've alluded to it, but how would you overall describe your World Series experience? And if you had to do it over again, what, if anything, would you change?
Well, it was awesome. It was like a dream come true. As I say, we grew up in the era where you watched that game on Saturday afternoon, the championship game for the Little League World Series from Williamsport. I remember that distinctly. So it's like, wow, we're in Williamsport. You know, you see the Lamadi Stadium, and at that time there was only one stadium. They were building the second one that they use now, the Volunteers Field, I think it's called. And the crowd was like Fenway Park size. Somebody said, I think they fit like 30,000 in that place. You know, you look around when they introduce the teams on the first Saturday, you have this parade of teams, and it's like surreal. You're like in a dream. I wouldn't change anything other than it'd be nice to if we'd have won, but our kids played their hearts out. You know, I don't have any regrets at all when it comes to that. Like, we did the best we could. Frank coached them up. He was the right manager for that group of kids. Scott was a great third base coach, and also, you know, strategy coach when we would sit and strategize what we wanted to do, and I helped them out wherever I could. And the kids, I think, had a great time. I remember Frank said at the time, because we were on our day off, we went to the hotel where the families were staying, and the kids swam and so forth, and we were just talking about how surreal this was. We're on ESPN every day, and we're at the Little League World Series from Goffstown, New Hampshire, which, you know, for us, that was an incredible accomplishment for those kids. And truthfully, you do need a little bit of luck. I'm sure Alan will acknowledge that. With those kinds of things, there's always a little bit of luck that goes into it. You get a couple of breaks here and there, but by and large, our kids earned everything they got, and they deserved to be there. And once we got there, we played some teams that are, you know, maybe a little better than us. But if you watch the games now, you see all these 10-run rule games. Like, we were in all those games. Like, we competed with those guys. We just didn't beat them, but we competed with them. And then you get a game on the last day against one of the other teams that didn't advance. So we played Canada, and we got a win there. So that was good for the kids to go off with a win before we went to the championship game. And then, you know, we left there. But they had all sorts of other great activities. They had a home run derby. They had an all-star game. You know, things that don't really get on TV, but activities for the kids. Kevin Costner was the guest, because they always have a guest guy who played Little League that was famous. So he was real popular. He gave the kids a lot of time, which was really good. So all in all, it was a great experience. The Williamsport people were really, really welcoming to us. And there we had, again, a team parents, a retired married couple who helped us out and did our scheduling and everything. And they're really wonderful people. So there isn't anything negative I have to say about that experience. It was great. Kids got to keep their uniforms. They were excited. They got all sorts of equipment. They met a lot of famous people. I think ML Carr was there. I don't know why, but he was there, and he came into the bunkhouse and met all the kids. They were excited to see that stuff.
Waving his towel.
So they enjoyed, and we were, by that point, we were on the road for 3 weeks. So, for 12-year-old boys to be away from their homes for 3 weeks and still be having a good time, not a whole lot of homesick, or not that they would admit, I think that just told you how much they enjoyed that. Being together, too. That was a real group of kids that were friendly with each other as well. So things just worked out. The magic summer. I remember at a party after the fact, I heard a parent say, "Oh, this is going to be great. These guys have been there, and now we're going to keep going back year after year." And it's hard to do. It's really hard, and I'm sure Alan will acknowledge things that go into it and a little bit of luck. It's just hard to do. I mean, the fact that we've gone to Bristol that many times since is awesome.
You guys, all the volunteers involved, are very instrumental in getting to that point. And we both want to thank you, both of you, for coming with us tonight and sharing some of the insights of beginning of the...
Are you wrapping up?
Yes, I am.
You can't.
I can't.
No.
Okay.
One of the questions was Toms River the best team there?
Okay.
And they weren't.
They weren't. Who was?
No. Staten Island was a better team than them. I don't know what your take on it, but my son and I, convinced to this day, and won't change our mind, Staten Island, bar none, was better. And they would, so you come out and they have to keep their cleats outside. So they're in the bunkhouse putting their cleats on. Staten Island's over here. They start coming out. And then they start walking down, they single file down, and they get this chant going the whole way. Chant. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but it was like, holy crap. And they go out on the field and they take their infield. They put all their kids on the infield. They got kids on foul first base side, third base side, and they got 3 balls going at one time, and they're all singing. And these balls are whipping all around the place, and you're like, oh my God, we're gonna play these guys? I learned a little bit from that. When I got to Babe Ruth, I started playing Icky Thump and building a little of that into it, because it was intimidating. And they had the best pitcher there, Matt Castellano, who he pitched into the 8th with 18 Ks in the semifinal game, but ended up losing it. There was a kid, Donnie Lewis, who came from Delaware. He had a run of 20 games in a row coming into Bristol where he hit a home run, and he hit 3 more.
Wow.
In the tournament until they just started walking him all the time. The thing that, Frazier was really good for Toms River, obviously, but they had the 2 best pitchers combination with a lefty, Fisher, and Casey Gaynor. And that was their advantage. They had more depth in pitching, but Staten Island was the best team there.
A little anecdote for that game against Staten Island. I don't know if you remember.
And we beat them, correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did too. Yeah.
They had a first baseman. I think his name was Goldberg.
Horowitz.
Horowitz, okay.
Yep.
Large boy.
Batted-
Large boy
batted
in height
leadoff.
and girth. And he hit a home run off of Jamie Moran that probably went another 100 feet past the fence. But as he
To lead off the game.
as he rounded third base, Jamie came off the mound and said, "Nice hit." I just said that's such a great story because it shows that they were having fun and appreciated stuff. And
And they respect the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think Castellano got up behind him and hit another home run. We were losing 2-0 before the first out was recorded. And we beat them 3-2 when Chief stole home.
yeah,
Yeah.
great game.
They were good.
Well, again, thank you both very much.
Yeah, thank you. It
It's
was
been nice reminiscing.
fun to
I
relive
remember
it.
like the town was fixated on this team. Both teams.
Both
winning
years.
the state
Both years.
championship and then going to the World Series.
And
It,
the New York Times wrote an article about Goffstown, New
Yeah.
Hampshire.
I sat next to that guy that wrote
It was crazy. They
article.
came to town after we won in Bristol. They said, hey, because I was back in town, I had to come back because of a football commitment before I left. And they interviewed me at the field, and then next thing you know, here's this article in the New York Times about Goffstown junior baseball, which was
I
really
sat next
cool.
to that New York Times reporter at in the press line or whatever, and he was driving me crazy. It was hard to watch the game because he was trying to get all this information. He was just there to write that big story. It was a nice story.
Well, Bronx was the favorite in that game. They had rolled right through the tournament. I mean, we had our success, but they were just like this mythical team. They all wore the same clothes. When they were not, they dressed alike. They all stayed together. They didn't really mix.
They didn't speak English.
They didn't speak English. But, you know, and their managers, they just kept them kind of cloistered, but they rolled, and they were this mythical team, and everybody thought they were just going to roll in that game. That's why I think we were the underdog, and the fact that we won, we were this team from Goffstown, New Hampshire, beating this big Bronx team. I mean, that's the story for the Times, I'm sure. That was a big deal to them. And I remember also when you lose at Bristol, I don't know if they did it in your year, but when you lose, when you're eliminated, you have to leave immediately. So that night, it's just the two of our teams left in the bunkhouses.
Oh.
So I'm thinking, okay, this game ended, 9, probably maybe close to 10 o'clock at night, and those kids, those poor kids from the Bronx, their parents, they had to leave. They couldn't stay, and they're crying, and and our kids were kind of, shaking hands with them and talking with them a little bit. But yeah, they had to leave, and they were all upset. I think they just figured that they were going to roll and win that game. So yeah, they made you leave immediately. Not in Bristol, not in Williamsport, but in Bristol. For whatever reason, that was their rule. So we got to stay. They treat you like rock stars once you win, and you're the Eastern Regional champ. You sign baseballs. And,
the people who run
crazy.
Bristol, they want to be well represented in
Yep,
Williamsport.
they do.
That's important to them. They want the best teams going.
I went to the Little League World Series, I think in March this year, and talked to the executive director, and he went down into the basement and pulled out a baseball that you guys had all autographed. So that's pretty
very
neat.
cool.
He didn't have much else in the archives about Goffstown. But,
To follow up on what you were closing with, and I know I speak for Howard too, that the outpouring of support that came from Goffstown was phenomenal. The crowds that we had down in Bristol were always larger than anybody else.
Yep.
And it was, a lot of town support, which I guess goes along with the theme here, and that baseball to Goffstown is important, and it's in the blood.
oh yeah.
I mean, even in Williamsport, people took vacation time and came down there. It was like unbelievable. We had, I know Alan went, but a bunch of the Goffstown residents came who had no stake in it other than, they were fans. Their kids maybe played, and that was awesome to see people down there too, and connect. So it was really,
It was a lot of fun.
it was awesome.
Yeah. But that play in Bristol of sending Ben to score is overrated. There's no choice in that matter.
There isn't, but
You're sending him. You're
you know,
sending him.
some guys would be conservative and hold them. You know that.
That was the play.
That is the play. You
Yeah.
got to do it. I agree, but not everybody would.
Yeah.
We're way late on that, but I think I remember the Goffstown always being more aggressive. I don't know if that was the history of you guys. You go to first to third on bunts and a lot of stuff. Yeah.
That was a theme of our team. Is we would even do delayed steals back then, which you never see nowadays. You see a catcher lollipopping a ball back to the pitcher. We're taking the
Yeah,
next
you take
base.
off, yeah.
We've taken home on that play.
Or if they turn their back and walk back to the
Yeah,
mound.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't see that anymore in the game. In fact, you see just the opposite. You see them overthrow the pitcher and the ball goes out to second. The kid's still standing on third and driving me crazy.
It's a different game. They mimic
yeah.
the major leaguers. It's a
Yeah.
power game. They all
Yeah.
want to jack the
Yeah.
ball and hit it out.
Yeah, but they've deadened the bat, and I'm convinced the ball was different this year. You rarely saw any shots.
Yeah,
They've really
true.
taken the life out of it. And then when you only bat your top of the order a couple times a game, it's gotten boring to me. And I was a World Series junkie from then on. We would build our vacations around watching those.
Yeah, batting 12 is hard.
Yeah,
It's a different mentality.
yeah, it really is.
Your
isn't
number
it?
3 hitter or your 4 hitter, you're batting 1 and 2 because you want to get the extra bats for those
Yeah,
guys. You know, it's a
might not even
whole
hit.
kind of different mentality. And your 12 hitter is more like a leadoff guy, even though he's not going to get as many
Yeah.
at bats because you want to have him set the table for these next 2 players
Yeah.
who are
But he-
probably your best hitters.
But even back when we were playing, Horowitz was batting leadoff, the
Yeah.
biggest guy in the tournament. And I'm like, who the heck does that? How do you not get a couple of guys on? And then flash ahead years later, and there's Ohtani batting leadoff, and there's Judge batting leadoff. And I'm like, what's going on here? And it's you see
True,
that.
they
you
get
see
the
that.
extra at bat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It makes
Those
sense if you think about it like that.
those Staten Island guys knew what they were doing. But they got fired because they didn't win.
Just the fact that you guys were, I want to say just regular people from town who had probably kids in the program. I know you all did, but that kind of stuff like that, you've got a team that's really almost has professional coaches, and they're not the only ones. There's a group of them. And you said they talk to each other every year, they know each other. To me, it just takes a little bit away from it. You know, instead of making just a simple little league, some team out in who knows where, Goffstown, New Hampshire,
Yeah.
gets it to go to the World Series.
Yeah, well, you see a little bit. You've seen a little bit of that here in New Hampshire with Bedford. You know, Bedford kind of taken over so much for so long. But you know, even those teams like Tom's River that comes back every year, or the one in Georgia, Warner. It still is a tough thing to do. So you got to give them the credit that they deserve for that. And
Well, gentlemen, Mr. Palmer, Mr. Sobola, I say Mr. on purpose because you always say that to someone who's older than you out of respect.
I wasn't
made my
playing. I
only
wasn't
way-
playing Little League in 1959.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, both for a fun revisit of
Yeah.
some youthful excitement in the town of Goffstown.
Yeah, it
We
was great.
appreciate it, yeah.
Thank you.
It's nice to share it.
Yeah, it was
Because
fun.
sometimes you feel like it gets forgotten, so it's nice of you guys to dredge it up again.